My name is Adam Knox. I'm 33 years old, and at my brother's wedding, my dad got drunk, took the mic, and told a room full of 200 people that I wasn't married. Wasn't educated, but hey, at least I was good for a check. And they laughed. Jason, my brother and the groom, my parents, the guests, even the DJ cracked a smile. I sat there, dead silent, the only one not in on the joke. I could feel my stomach twist so tight it was like it was trying to disappear. I just dropped nearly 6 figures to make that wedding happen venue. Food, band, photographer, even the flowers flown in from out of state. The only reason they got married on a vineyard instead of a courthouse parking lot was me. But to them, I was still just the backup plan. It wasn't always this way. Growing up, we were a middle-class family with more love than money, or at least that's what I believed. I started working right out of high school, never did the college thing. While my siblings were off finding themselves in dorm rooms and study abroad programs, I was running deliveries out of a rusty pickup, building a logistics company from scratch. 10 years of hustling, grinding, and a lot of ramen noodles later, it finally took off. That's when the calls started. Just until we get caught up, it's only temporary. You're the only one doing well. Adam, I gave and kept giving. Helped my sister Claire with college, paid off mom's credit cards, bought dad a truck when his broke down, covered Jason's second round of tuition when he dropped out the first time, then a third when he did it again. He was always the golden boy, even when he failed, especially when he failed. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the ghost who showed up with a check but never got a seat at the table. But nothing prepared me for the wedding. From the moment I arrived, I felt like an outsider. I wasn't listed on the wedding program, wasn't seated near the bridal party. Jason barely made eye contact, and Ava, his fiancée, smiled like she knew something I didn't. I chalked it up to stress, told myself weddings were chaotic. Maybe they'd thank me during the speeches. Maybe they'd surprise me with a toast. Instead, my father got up after the best man and grabbed the mic. Already a few glasses in, he started off charming, telling stories about Jason as a boy. The crowd laughed, nodded, then his eyes landed on me. As for Adam, he said, and smirked, he's not married, not educated, but hey, at least he's good for a check. Laughter? It echoed around the vineyard like thunder. Jason laughed. Ava giggled politely. Claire shook her head but said nothing. My mom put a hand over her mouth like it was harmless. I stood up. I didn't yell, didn't make a scene. I walked to the front, took the mic from my dad, and said, calmly, "You're right, I'm not married, I don't have a degree, but I do have a memory and a backbone." The room froze. That $100,000 gift, the one that made tonight possible? Forget it. Ava blinked. Jason's jaw dropped. I paid for this venue, this band, those lights, every detail down to the monogrammed cocktail napkins. And all I got was a punchline. I turned to the crowd. I've spent 10 years cleaning up this family's messes. I paid bills, rent, tuition, car loans, and bailouts. And the one time I'm in the room not writing a check, I'm a joke. I handed the mic back to the DJ and walked out. I didn't wait for Jason to follow. I didn't look back. I got in my car, drove to the hotel I'd booked quietly just in case, and didn't answer a single call. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I stopped being their safety net, and the fallout was going to be more expensive than they ever imagined. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was a war zone. 17 missed calls, 5 voicemails, dozens of texts, none from Jason, but plenty from my mother, my father, Claire, and even Ava's mom. All variations of the same theme. Come back. Let's talk. It was just a joke. And my personal favorite, you're overreacting. Overreacting. I reread the text from my dad that simply said, "Don't let your ego ruin your brother's big day." My ego. This man, who stood in front of everyone and reduced my identity to a walking ATM, thought I was the one who crossed a line. That was when it hit me. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. I was the investment, the family stock that paid dividends. And now that I'd finally pulled the plug, the entire system was glitching. I didn't respond to anyone that day. I didn't go home. Didn't answer the door. Didn't check my email. I went for a long walk. Ate dinner alone for the first time in ages and felt a strange mix of rage and relief. Then came the backlash. 2 days later, Claire showed up at my office unannounced. She bypassed the receptionist by flashing that I'm family look and walked straight into my workspace. Arms folded, face set in a mix of exasperation and smug concern. "Seriously," she said without sitting down, "you're just cutting everyone off." I looked at her, silent. Mom's been crying nonstop. Jason's losing it. Ava had to cancel part of their honeymoon plans. "Good," I said and turned back to my screen. Claire scoffed. "That's messed up. You think what happened at the wedding wasn't—" She hesitated. "It was a joke." "No, it was a statement," I said flatly, one everyone laughed at. Claire shifted. "You always do this, hold on to stuff. Act like you're the only one who sacrifices." I turned slowly. "Who else has sacrificed? You, Jason. Did you help Mom pay off her medical bills? Did you buy Dad a truck? Cover Jason's failed businesses?" She was quiet. "Exactly," I said. "You all benefited. And now that I'm not playing the part, suddenly I'm selfish." Claire's face softened. "Look, I get it, but this isn't how we fix things." I met her eyes. "There's nothing to fix. There's just boundaries now, and those start with me not being your fallback anymore." She left without another word. That night, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and logged into every account I'd ever set up to help the family. Utilities canceled. Cell phone plan switched to individual billing. Jason's Gym LLC account, I quietly co-signed, removed. Mom's pharmacy subscription I'd been covering for years closed. Over the next 72 hours, I dismantled every silent thread connecting me to their comfort. And that's when they panicked. Texts flooded in like a tidal wave. "Mom, the insurance lapsed. Why would you do this? Dad, don't be dramatic. We were family before the money. Jason, you're ruining everything. We needed you." There it was again, needed. Not wanted, not appreciated, I just needed, like a tool. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something even colder. I sent out certified letters to all the vendors from the wedding. I explained the payment freezes, told them they'd need to redirect invoices to Jason and Ava, and no, I would not be assuming responsibility for their remaining balances. By midweek, I started getting calls from the caterers, the quartet, even the honeymoon planner. "Jason Knox is unreachable. Do you have a forwarding number? He said you were paying every time." I calmly repeated the same line: "That arrangement has ended. They'll need to make alternate payment plans." Some tried to guilt trip me. Others were understanding. But the most surprising came from Ava. Her message was simple: "Can we talk?" I ignored it. Because at that point, I'd begun to see the full picture, not just the wedding humiliation, but years of quiet betrayals I'd swallowed. I remembered Jason calling me 2 months prior, asking if I could just put down the deposit on their honeymoon as a favor. "Don't worry," he said, "Ava's parents are covering the rest." They weren't. Neither was Jason. Every time I thought I was helping them out of a jam, they were actively creating one behind my back. This wasn't just about one night. This was about a lifetime of manipulation disguised as family. Then came the escalation. Friday night, I was home, lights off, finally feeling calm until my doorbell rang. Repeatedly, I checked the peephole. It was Dad. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. Shirt wrinkled, tie undone. I didn't open the door. "Adam," he called out, voice thick with frustration. "Enough of this." I didn't answer. He knocked again. I said something stupid. I was trying to be funny. "You know I didn't mean it like that." Still silent. "Your brother is falling apart. Your mother is beside herself. What do you want me to do?" "Get on my knees." He paused, then lowered his voice. "I was proud of you, you know, always have been. Just didn't know how to say it." For a second, I believed him. Then I remembered the text, "Don't let your ego ruin your brother's big day." And I remembered every time I called him from the road, broke and scared, and he told me I should have gone to college. I stepped back from the door, let him stand there in the hallway. Eventually, he left. I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't regret it either. They weren't sorry. They were scrambling. Not because they lost me, but because they lost control. The silence didn't last. 3 days after Dad showed up at my door, I got a call from Miranda, my attorney friend. "I did some digging," she said, and I immediately sat up straighter. "You're going to want to hear this." Miranda had always been good with legalese, but even better with sniffing out what people wanted buried. I had her start looking into the house situation after my parents tried to quietly transfer the title to Jason and Ava. I pulled the records from the county office. She said, "They initiated a quitclaim deed transfer 2 weeks ago." "What?" "Yup. Your parents? They signed the house over to Jason and Ava illegally. Without your approval, they forged your signature. My stomach dropped. That's fraud. Adam, she said, her voice sharper now. And not small-time fraud either. That house is valued at nearly $800,000. I was speechless. They were just going to give it to him. I finally managed. Not just give it, mortgage it. Jason applied for a loan using the house as collateral the day after the wedding. Now the real picture came into focus. Jason didn't just laugh at me because he was careless. He did it because he thought he'd already won. The house was his, the money would come, and I was already obsolete. Miranda wasn't done. I also ran a check on your parents' financials. You're listed as a co-signer on 2 of their credit cards, both maxed. One has a cash advance from last month, $6,000 labeled wedding reimbursement. I never saw a cent. I said cold. Nope, but you're still legally tied to the debt. We'll challenge it, but they've done damage. The final blow. Jason had created a new business entity. Not just the gym I already knew about. This one was an events consultancy. The same one that billed you $7,000 for wedding planning services last quarter. He had charged me for the wedding he asked me to pay for. I leaned back in my chair, my jaw locked so tight it hurt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a campaign. A slow, coordinated bleed out of my finances, respect, and role in the family, all while smiling and asking for just one more favor. And I'd fallen for it. Every time. Not anymore. It was Miranda who said it first. We need to hit back. Legally, logically, clean and precise. So I said 2 words I hadn't spoken in years. Do it. I gave her everything power of attorney to challenge the deed transfer, pull credit reports, freeze co-signed accounts, and start building a case for fraud. That night, I pulled out a journal I hadn't touched in years. I listed every dollar I'd given Jason, every bill I paid for my parents, every lie I had let slide. The pages filled faster than I expected. And when I was done, I did something small but significant. I changed the locks on my condo. Not because I thought they'd break in, but because the metaphor felt good. The next morning, I met with another old friend, Danny, who worked in real estate law. I had a new goal now to formally evict Jason and Ava from the house I legally owned. They're not tenants. I told Danny, they're squatters in a life I built. Savage, he said, but doable. He drafted the paperwork. Miranda would back it with the trust documents. By the end of the week, Jason and Ava would be served. But I wasn't done. I also pulled every old email, invoice, and text from Jason related to the gym startup, the so-called investment I had gifted him. Turns out, I had more than enough documentation to prove it was a loan, not a donation. So we filed notice to collect $40,000, 30 days or civil litigation. I made a burner email and sent it from a legal-sounding address, knoxss@mgmt@outlook.com. It felt petty. It also felt perfect. The dominoes began to fall. By Thursday, Jason had called me 7 times. Ava called twice. I didn't answer. Miranda handled everything. Then came Claire. She texted Jason's freaking out. He got served papers. Are you really doing this? Me, he did it to himself. Claire, he's your brother. Me, no. He's a leech with my last name. 2 days later, Jason showed up at my office. I didn't let him in. He stood outside the glass door, folder in hand, trying to look remorseful. A few employees noticed. He didn't yell, he didn't bang, he just stood there, pitiful. It would have worked a year ago. Now I closed the blinds. Then came the call that changed everything. Miranda again. There's something else. She said, your mother opened a bank account 2 years ago. Okay, in your name, with your social security number, and she's been using it for wire transfers from your business. I blinked. She what? It looks like she used her access to your tax returns to fabricate income, then funneled that through this ghost account. I don't know what she was planning, maybe padding loan apps or building leverage. I was quiet for a long time. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had finally seen the truth. They didn't just use me. They built their lives on me with lies, fraud, and forged paper trails. And now, it was time to burn the foundation down. The first knock came on a Monday morning. Jason and Ava were mid-brunch on the patio of the house they thought was theirs when the process server walked up the driveway and handed them the envelope. Inside, a legal notice stating the trust had initiated formal proceedings to reclaim the property. They had 30 days to vacate or face eviction. I know this because Jason called me 19 times that day, left 7 voicemails, each angrier than the last. "I can't believe you'd stoop this low," one said. "This was supposed to be our home," said another. And the final one, his voice breaking, "You really think you're the only one who ever sacrificed?" That one almost made me laugh. Because I was the only one who ever sacrificed, and no one ever asked me if I wanted to. The next morning, I sent a courtesy email to the venue coordinator. Subject: final payment responsibility. Body: please direct all unpaid balance invoices to Jason Knox and Ava Lane. I have formally removed myself from financial responsibility for this event. Attached scanned legal documentation verifying the removal of my name from all associated accounts. I signed off with "Kind regards, Adam Knox." No threats, no drama, just clean, cold distance. But the real show began later that week when Miranda filed the fraud complaint regarding the forged house deed. Not only did my parents attempt to transfer ownership illegally, they did so using a signature they traced off an old lease agreement, a literal trace. The notary fake. The signature date coincided with the week I was out of the country on business. We had flight logs to prove it. I didn't even need to press criminal charges. Just the threat of an investigation sent my father into a tailspin. Mom called first. "Adam, please, we didn't think it would come to this. We thought it was all family business." "No," I said, "it was fraud, and I have a lawyer. You'll be hearing from her." Click. That same afternoon, I received a text from Jason, "You ruined everything." I stared at it for a second, then typed, "No, I just stopped letting you ruin me." Then I blocked him again. The fallout came fast. The credit cards I co-signed for my parents were closed, one of them with a $9 and $200 balance. Collections came calling. Their car insurance was canceled. Their phones shut off. For the first time in years, they were forced to face their own lives without me cushioning every blow. And when the utilities were finally cut lights out, literally, I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I sat quietly at my kitchen table, poured myself a cup of coffee, and felt peace. That Friday, I went one step further. I posted on Facebook. To all extended family wondering why I've distanced myself, I spent a decade funding my parents' lifestyle, my brother's failures, and my sister's tuition. I covered rent, insurance, debt, weddings, honeymoons, and more, all while being insulted, ignored, and used. I'm done. If you've heard their side, this is mine. Ask for receipts, I have them. The post went viral in our circle. Cousins messaged me. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in years replied with, "Proud of you for finally standing up." And then came Claire. She messaged, "You okay?" I typed back, "Getting there." But the real moment of reckoning, that came when Jason tried to sue me. A desperate counterattack. He claimed the wedding was a gift, that the house had been promised, that the gym loan was verbal and interest-free. Miranda dismantled it line by line. We submitted texts, bank statements, the signed loan agreement, even a voice memo where Jason himself thanked me for the loan and promised to pay it back. His case collapsed in days. We didn't even go to trial. His lawyer quit. The judge dismissed it with prejudice. Jason now owed me $40,000 plus legal fees. And then, Ava left. Miranda found the filing in the county records. Ava had initiated divorce proceedings, citing irreconcilable deception. Apparently, she'd found Jason's burner accounts where he funneled cash from the failed gym into a crypto wallet under his name. She emailed me herself. I didn't know everything. I only knew what he told me. I'm sorry for laughing at that speech. If I'd known then what I know now, I didn't reply. Some things don't need closure. I was still rebuilding, still waking up without checking my phone in fear, still learning how to spend money on myself instead of everyone else. And yet, for all the damage they caused, the thing that shocked me most, they still didn't understand what they did wrong. A week later, I received a card in the mail. From my mother. No note, just a Bible verse scribbled inside. Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. I threw it away, because I had finally learned the truth. They weren't my family, not in the way that mattered. They were blood and obligation, expectation and debt, but not love. And definitely not loyalty. And now they were nothing more than a story I tell. Story 2. I hadn't seen my family in nearly 2 years when the call came. It was my mother. Her voice a mix of syrupy guilt and forced excitement. She said she missed me, that Christmas wasn't the same without all of us together, that she just wanted to make things right this year. "I need my son home," she said, voice cracking mid-sentence. "Please, David, just come back." Against my better judgment, I said yes. I canceled a work trip, Found someone to watch my dog. Bought gifts, real ones. Not gift cards. Not cash things I actually picked out. I even baked a batch of my aunt's favorite cookies and wrapped them in a tin. 8 hours later, I pulled up to their house in rural Kentucky. The snow was patchy, the streets silent. It looked like something from a Hallmark movie if you ignored the years of unresolved resentment boiling under the surface. As soon as I stepped out of the car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister, Beth. "Hurry up, I need to pee." Confused, I rang the doorbell. My mom opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh good," she said, already turning around. "You're here. You're watching the kids. We're going to Aruba." I blinked. What? Beth strutted by in leggings and a tank top mid-December, mind you, with a suitcase in one hand and a passport in the other. She ruffled her kid's hair and tossed me the baby bag like a football. "Kids, say bye to Uncle Dave. Try not to wipe your snot on him." My parents chuckled. Beth's husband honked the horn outside. And just like that, they were gone. No joke, no punchline, just abandonment in broad daylight. The first night was chaos. Beth's twins were screaming about some YouTube toy review. The youngest wouldn't eat anything unless it was shaped like a dinosaur. My old room had been turned into a home gym/storage area. I slept in the basement on a fold-out couch with a broken spring. Around 2 a.m., I opened the hall drawer looking for Tylenol and found something else. A folder labeled Vacation Confirmations. Inside was a full itinerary: flights, hotel, car rental, spa reservations. Charged to my credit card? My old card. The one I used to help Beth out with when she was fresh out of her divorce. The one she promised she cut up. I stared at the charges over $4,000. My points were gone. The room was under my name. They hadn't invited me home. They'd ambushed me. I didn't get angry. Not right away. I just picked up my phone, opened the hotel's website, logged in using my email, and canceled everything. No refunds, no rebookings, just a cascade of cancellation emails, each more satisfying than the last. At 11:52 p.m., the first call came. I let it ring. The next morning, the texts started. "Why are we locked out? Did you cancel it? What's going on? Please tell me you didn't." Beth's messages flipped from angry to desperate within hours. Mom's tone followed suit. "Dad tried to play mediator. Can we talk about this like adults?" he wrote. As if anyone had offered me that courtesy when they dumped 3 kids on me without asking. By the third day, they were staying in a cheap motel. No beach, no AC. The twins had food poisoning from gas station sushi. Apparently, their youngest tried to flush a plush toy down the toilet and flooded the room. Meanwhile, the kids and I were fine. I made pancakes, let them watch cartoons. We built the ugliest pillow fort you've ever seen. One of them, giggling, said, "Mom says breathing helps when we're annoying. Are we annoying yet?" I laughed for the first time that week. Then the front door slammed open. Beth was back. Her face red, hair frizzy, shoes soaked. "You think this is funny?" she shrieked. The kids ran upstairs. I didn't flinch. She called me selfish, immature, accused me of sabotaging her first real vacation in years. Mom nodded behind her, like this was somehow my fault. I reached for an envelope on the table and handed it to Mom. "What's this?" "Bank statement," I said, and this I slid over a second sheet, is from my lawyer. I reported the charges. Beth scoffed, but her eyes went wide. You're blowing this out of proportion. You committed fraud," I said calmly. "Over $4,000, that's not a family misunderstanding, that's a crime." She called me names, said no judge would take it seriously. Then she made the mistake of bringing up Dad's will. "Go ahead. David, report me. You think you're getting anything after this?" Mom gasped. I hit play on a voice memo. Beth's voicemail, the one where she screamed about using my card because it was easier and how I should just fix it. The room went still. Beth turned pale. Mom sat down without being asked. Dad walked into the kitchen like he'd just seen a ghost. I stayed one more night for the kids. Then I left before dawn. No note, no goodbyes, just the sound of my tires crunching snow as I drove back to Chicago. I didn't stop, not even for coffee. By the time I hit the Indiana state line, my phone had buzzed over 60 times. Beth wasn't just texting me, she'd activated the entire extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all looped into a group chat that hadn't seen activity since Grandma's funeral. She told them I'd ruined Christmas, claimed I'd gone rogue, that I lied to the hotel and jeopardized the safety of her kids by leaving them stranded in a foreign place. Aruba? Not exactly the wilderness. At first, no one responded. Then Aunt Valerie chimed in. Didn't you steal Jenny's airline points 2 years ago for Vegas? Silence. Then my cousin Luke added, I remember when David bought you tires and you never paid him back. That opened the floodgates. Turns out, Beth had been riding the family guilt train for years. Car loans, forgotten debts, last-minute emergencies that always turned out to be spa weekends or concert tickets. People had kept quiet, but now that she was on the attack, they were done holding back. Beth tried to salvage it, sent a long message about how we shouldn't air private family matters like this. Too late. She had loaded the gun and handed it to us. Meanwhile, Mom sent me a separate text. Call me, we need to talk before this gets worse. I didn't, because worse, in our family, usually just meant less convenient for her. A week passed. The lawyer sent Beth's team a formal letter. Nothing aggressive, just a documented record of the charges, a request for repayment, and a notice that fraud had been officially filed with the bank. That's when things went from messy to surreal. Beth's lawyer, a family friend, apparently claimed I had implied consent by previously giving her access to the card. My attorney laughed out loud reading it. Implied consent, he said, that's like stealing someone's bike and saying, well, they let me ride it once in 2019. We pushed forward. I stayed quiet on the group chat, let the silence speak. Beth kept spiraling. She posted a long Facebook status about betrayal. No names. Of course, just vague enough for plausible deniability, but targeted enough for everyone to know who she meant. It backfired. A friend from her mom group commented, didn't you say your brother was footing the bill for that trip? That comment vanished within an hour. Then came the kicker. My dad called. He left a voicemail. I hadn't heard his voice in months. David, he began, as if we were old pals catching up. I think we should all sit down. This has gotten out of hand. No need to let lawyers make enemies of family. I didn't delete the message. I just never responded. Because if anyone had the chance to stop this mess before it exploded, it was him. He saw it unfolding and chose not to act. Probably because rocking the boat was less comfortable than just letting me sink. Beth's kids stayed with our dad for the week. Mom didn't call again until Sunday. She showed up at my apartment building. No warning, no invitation. Just there. I buzzed her in, against my better judgment. We stood awkwardly in the hallway outside my door. She wore her concerned mother coat, the one she pulled out for parent-teacher conferences or church potlucks, a coat that screamed performance. I drove through the night, she said, clutching a paper coffee cup. We need to talk. I didn't invite her inside. She tried to tell me Beth was spiraling, that she'd locked herself in her room, that she wasn't coping well, that the kids were asking for me, that the family was falling apart, and somehow that was my fault. I stood there, letting her finish. Then I said, I'm not your fixer anymore. She blinked. I kept going. You used to tell people I was the dependable one, the stable one, but you meant expendable. You meant I'd say yes when everyone else said no. Her eyes glistened. I'm not angry anymore. I said, I'm just done. Then I closed the door. Soft, calm, final. The next day, Beth's lawyer caved. They agreed to repay everything, in writing, within 90 days. The bank cleared the fraud flag. My points weren't refundable, but the principal was intact. Beth didn't apologize, not once, not even a performative text. Instead, she deleted the group chat. Poof, like it had never existed. My mom tried one last Hail Mary, sending me a birthday card a week later. It wasn't my birthday, just a card with a glittery, hope you're okay, and some passive-aggressive quote about forgiveness. I tossed it in the trash unopened. That weekend, I got coffee with someone I hadn't seen in years. Beth's ex. He reached out on Facebook, said he'd heard what happened. Said he wasn't surprised. Over lattes. He told me stories that made my jaw clench. Financial manipulation, emotional blackmail. She's always had a talent for making other people feel responsible for her choices, he said. He leaned back in his chair. You're not the first person she's used, he added. You're just the first one to fight back. That stuck with me. Weeks passed. The messages dried up. The drama faded. Christmas came. I didn't go home. Instead, I hosted a potluck with a few coworkers, people who'd also distanced themselves from toxic families. We drank cheap wine, played card games, and laughed like the world wasn't broken. Someone asked me, halfway through the night, how I knew it was time to walk away. I told them what I'd realized. If they only treat you like family when they need something, then they were never really family. The weeks after Christmas felt like walking through a fog. The noise from the family faded, but what replaced it was a cold silence. heavier than I expected. Then came the certified letter, a thick envelope with an official-looking seal, from a probate attorney I didn't know. They wanted to talk about the family estate, about changing the will, about creating a new trust, but it wasn't just about money. They wanted to attach strings legal obligations for caregiving, financial responsibilities tied to inheritance. And guess who was at the center of it? Me, the same guy who'd been left babysitting, who'd been used and discarded, the one they'd shut out. Reading that letter, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in a long time: anger. Yes, but also disbelief. Could they really think I'd come crawling back? I called my lawyer immediately. He laughed, not the amused kind, but the "you've got to see this to believe it" kind. "Welcome to the world of estate planning," he said. "It's the last-ditch move for control freaks, trying to lock you in before you can walk away. This can be contested, but it's nasty." Turns out, Beth was pushing for this too. She wanted back in good graces, a place at the table but with conditions. She was shifting all long-term care responsibilities, debts, and even property maintenance onto me, like I was the family's financial babysitter again. Meanwhile, the group chat was dead. Silence is loud when it's forced. Mom's calls stopped too. Her check-in texts vanished. Dad sent one last message, vague and clipped. "Hope you're well. Things are complicated. Let's reconnect soon." I ignored it, because reconnecting meant swallowing pride and pain I wasn't ready to digest. But then, unexpectedly, I got a message from someone who had been quietly watching from the sidelines, Beth's ex. He reached out again. "Let me know if you need help with the legal stuff." He wrote, "We talked for hours." His stories echoed mine: years of manipulation, guilt trips, and emotional hostage-taking. "You're not alone," he said, "and you're the first to stand up." That was the first real support I'd felt in months. The legal battle began quietly. My lawyer sent a letter stating my refusal to be coerced into any caregiving agreements in exchange for inheritance. Beth's team fired back with a mountain of paperwork, claims that I was disrupting family harmony, that I was breaking tradition, that I was selfish. I didn't respond. Actions spoke louder. Family gatherings became a minefield. At a rare Christmas dinner with my Aunt Carol, whispers floated across the table. People who once avoided me now exchanged looks, some sympathetic, some cautious. Carol pulled me aside after the meal. "People see it," she said quietly. "They're tired of Beth's stories. Your side is coming through." Her words felt like a small victory, but also a reminder of how long this fight would last. Beth, for her part, doubled down. She posted another online rant, painting me as the villain. But the tide was turning. More family members started sharing their own experiences. Old debts, forgotten favors, quiet resentments. Aunts, cousins, even some uncles began privately messaging me, sharing stories they never told aloud. The family's facade was cracking. One evening, Dad called. His voice was different, hollow, weary. "I never thought it would come to this," he said. I asked him why he hadn't stopped Beth sooner. He was silent for a long time. "Because it wasn't serious to us," he finally admitted. "Until it was." The truth hit me like a punch. The will revision was put on hold after my lawyer filed a formal objection. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about fairness, about breaking cycles of favoritism and abuse. By spring, the family had fragmented almost completely. Beth stopped trying to reach me. Mom's silence grew. Dad retreated further. And I found something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I moved on, focused on work, rebuilt my life on my own terms. I stopped waiting for their approval, stopped hoping they'd see me as anything more than a backup plan. Looking back, it wasn't just about money or inheritance. It was about finally breaking free, about choosing myself over a family that only valued me when it suited them. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. Months turned into a year. The dust finally settled around the broken pieces of what used to be my family. The court battles faded, the lawsuits closed, the inheritance traps dismantled, and for the first time in decades, I felt something: simple relief. I didn't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I didn't even want it. What I wanted was peace, a space where I wasn't constantly trying to prove myself, where my worth wasn't tied to family approval or how much I could sacrifice. I started building that space quietly. Work took new meaning. I poured myself into projects that mattered to me, found a community that valued honesty and loyalty, made friends who celebrated my victories, comforted me in defeats, and never made me question my place. My relationship with my dad became different, less complicated, We met for lunch once a month at the old diner we used to go to after errands. The place was worn, with peeling vinyl booths and a jukebox that played whatever it wanted. We talked about baseball, the neighbor's terrible parking skills, the latest TV show. No pressure, no expectations. Just two men trying to connect without the past's heavy chains. Mom remained distant. She never called. She never apologized. But that's okay. Sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or reconciliations. Sometimes it's about accepting that people change in ways you can't follow. Beth, well, she tried to reach out a few times. Texts asking if I was happy now, emails filled with half-hearted apologies, and once, a voicemail dripping with fake remorse. I didn't respond. Because some doors, once closed, are best left that way. The kids, I saw them less and less. But we kept the bond we'd built during that turbulent week. And they sent drawings and silly texts. And I knew that no matter what the adults said, the real family was there in those small, messy moments. Looking back, I realize it wasn't just about the car, the money, or the failed vacation. It was about reclaiming my story, taking back control, saying no to being a doormat. I shared my story online once, anonymously at first. It resonated. People messaged me, telling their own tales of family drama, betrayal, and healing. We formed a quiet network of survivors, people who'd walked through fire and come out stronger. What I learned is this: family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's the people who show up when the blood runs cold, the friends who stand by you when your own kin turn away, the community you build when you decide to live for yourself. So, yeah, I left that night in December, driving away from the house that wasn't mine anymore. But I didn't just leave a family. I left behind the expectations, the pain, and the unspoken rules. I chose myself. And that choice, it was the best gift I ever gave. Yim, thank you for reading. If you're struggling with family, know you're not alone. Sometimes, the hardest goodbyes lead to the brightest new beginnings. After I walked away, I thought the past would stop haunting me. But the truth is, it never really goes away. It just waits, hiding in quiet moments. For months, I lived in a strange in-between place, not quite free, but no longer shackled. I kept hearing echoes, family voices, accusations, pleas for understanding, but mostly I found silence. That silence became a canvas, a chance to paint a new life without the toxic colors they'd splattered all over mine. I picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned: painting, writing, even playing the guitar again. I started volunteering at a community center, teaching kids trades and music. Helping others heal became part of my own healing. Surprisingly, life opened doors I never expected. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with. One became a mentor, encouraging me to write about my experiences. Another introduced me to people who valued me, not for what I could give, but simply for who I was. One quiet afternoon, while teaching a group of kids how to fix bikes, I realized something. Family isn't just blood and history. It's the people who stick by you when the world turns its back. It's the friends who see your worth when your own family can't. It's the community you choose. That realization freed me more than any court victory ever could. I made peace with what was lost and found joy in what was still possible. Then came the surprise: a call from Dad. Not a text, not an email. A real call. He said he'd been thinking a lot. He asked if I'd like to meet, not to argue or rehash old wounds, but just to talk. I hesitated. Was this a trick? A trap? Or maybe just a man trying to bridge a gap he'd let grow too wide? I said yes. We met again at the diner. This time, there was no awkwardness, no unspoken resentments. Just two men, both older, both wiser. We talked about small things: weather, sports, old memories. And then quietly, he said, "I'm proud of you." That simple sentence carried a weight I'd carried for years. And yet, it felt like a fresh start. Since then, I've rebuilt bridges where I wanted to, reclaimed parts of myself I'd lost trying to please a family that never saw me. I learned boundaries aren't walls, they're self-respect. And forgiveness, that's for me, not for them. So here I am, still healing, still growing, still choosing who I call family. And you know what? That's enough. If you're out there struggling with family pain, remember, you are not alone. You don't owe anyone your peace. Choose yourself. Because sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for walking this journey with me. May you find your own path to freedom and love. Story 3. My name's Jack. I'm 29 and my family. They pulled one hell of a stunt without me. I found out because of a video, an accidental upload from my sister, Emma, to our family group chat. There she was, standing on the deck of a massive cruise ship, the ocean stretching endlessly behind her. Steel drums played somewhere nearby, the sun bouncing off the waves. Then the camera swung, and I saw the mom and dad, laughing with drinks in hand. Dad wore a goofy flamingo shirt, and mom danced like no one was watching. Their plates were stacked with shrimp and lobster, things they never splurged on at home. I stared at that video 3 times before I could even type. Finally, I asked, "Wait, you guys are on a cruise?" The answer came fast. Mom's text read, "Sometimes a family needs a break when they have a burden like you," followed by a string of laughing emojis from Emma and a heart from Dad. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I just left the chat and sat there, stunned. It wasn't the first time I'd felt like an outsider, but this cut deeper than usual. Weeks earlier, I'd suggested a simple trip, a weekend getaway to celebrate the last weekend of summer. I even offered to cover the Airbnb, sending links to cheap cabins outside Estes Park. Mom's reply, "Sorry, that's not for us. We don't have money right now." I let it go, no hard feelings. But then, behind my back, they were on a luxury cruise, sipping cocktails and dancing under the sun while I was footing their grocery bills and renovating their rental apartment back home in Colorado Springs. That night, I drove the 8 hours to my place in the Springs, the apartment I'd bought, renovated, and offered them rent-free because their house was being fixed up. I had the master key. The door swung open, and it was like a bomb had exploded inside. Laundry dumped on the couch, dishes in the sink, Emma's clutter everywhere, even both bathrooms. The place didn't smell like home anymore. I didn't throw out their stuff, just locked Emma's things away in the guest room and changed every lock I could think of: front door, balcony slider, mailbox. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Your things are in the second room. Text me when you're back to pick them up. Jack." Then I drove back to Denver and blocked all 3 of them. I wasn't angry. Not then. I was hollow, like I'd finally seen the truth I'd tried to ignore. 2 weeks passed without a single word. Then came the knock. I peeked through the peephole. Mom, Dad, and Emma stood there. A quiet line of tired faces, no laughter, no smiles. Mom knocked again, voice pleading, "Jack, please, we need to talk. Just open the door." I didn't. I watched as their hope faded. Emma muttered something I couldn't hear. Dad looked down at the floor. After a full minute of knocking, they left. That's when it hit me. They never thought I'd really do it. They'd expected me to take it all like I always did, to keep taking care of them, forgiving, forgetting. But this time was different. They didn't come back that night or the next day. But Monday morning, my phone rang. A name I hadn't seen in years popped up: Aunt Michelle. She never calls, not birthdays, not holidays, nothing. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was soft, worried. "Hi, Jack. It's Aunt Michelle. I think your mom's really upset. Maybe you should hear her out. Family is family. Please call me back." I didn't call. I sat there, wondering if they'd told her everything: the cruise, the burden comment, the months I'd quietly supported them while they pretended to have no money. I doubted it. I imagined they'd painted me as the villain, the heartless landlord who kicked them out for no reason. Then a text from Emma. No apology, no explanation, just "Wow, real classy move." I blocked her again. Word spread fast. Cousin David unfollowed me on Instagram. Uncle stopped responding in the fantasy football chat. Mom posted a vague quote on Facebook about kindness being repaid with cruelty. Comments flooded in. "You'll regret it when you're gone." Maybe I would, but they weren't gone. They were still out there, lying. I stayed quiet. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just let it be. A week later, news arrived: they moved in with Aunt Michelle. Mom, Dad, Emma, all crammed into her 3-bedroom house with the broken AC and 4 cats. Emma took to Twitter, complaining about toxic people pretending to be generous. I didn't reply, but I saw every tweet, every jab. They hated me, not just resented me, hated me. And the worst part? I think it was because I said no. Because I reminded them they weren't entitled. Because I showed them I could take it all back. I visited every other weekend. They acted like I was crashing their party, like I was overstaying my welcome. And now that I'd reminded them of the truth, I was the bad guy. But I hadn't told anyone my side of the story, not really. Not even friends. I just let it go. Until 2 weeks after they moved in with Aunt Michelle, I got a letter hand-delivered. Slipped under my apartment door in Denver. No stamp, no envelope, just 5 sentences from Dad. "You made your point. We still need a place to live. You're better than this. Stop punishing your family for a joke. Let us back in." A joke. I read it 3 times, then laughed, then I folded it, threw it away, and made dinner. After that letter, things spiraled faster than I expected. At first, I thought maybe they'd get the message that I wasn't going to let myself be used anymore. But I was wrong. The next day, Aunt Michelle started spreading her own version of the story. According to her, I'd kicked my family out over a silly meme. She painted me as a heartless monster who cared nothing for the people who raised me. It was like a wildfire, and it didn't take long for it to spread through the family and friends. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from uncles I hadn't spoken to in years. Texts from cousins who suddenly needed to talk. Most were polite at first, trying to understand, but soon the tone changed. They say you threw your family out in the cold. One text read, "Are you sure you didn't overreact?" Another asked. I kept quiet. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who hadn't bothered to ask before. Then came Emma's message, calm but cutting. "How could you do this to us?" No anger, no tears, just cold disbelief. She hung up before I could say a word. That night, Michelle went on Facebook, tagging me directly. I opened my home to a family in crisis. She wrote, "And my own nephew drags us through the mud." I saw every comment sympathy for her, anger at me. The family group chat exploded, but I wasn't even in it anymore. Days later, my mom showed up in Denver. Not at my door, she sat in her car across the street for nearly an hour. I watched her through the blinds, the same coat she always wore when she was trying to hide how upset she was. Eventually, she left without a word. She sent me a photo later. My old dog, Max. He was sitting on the couch, staring out the window, looking lost. Caption, "He still misses you." Max was the only part of that family I ever really felt safe with. The photo cut deep, but not for the reasons she hoped. It was like a last attempt to worm inside my head, to get to me emotionally. A week later, I got a call from a neighbor. Rachel and Dad had tried to break into my apartment while I was at work. My neighbor saw them fiddling with the patio door, probably with a copy of the old key. When she confronted them, Dad said, "This is our house. We just got locked out by mistake." She threatened to call the police. That same day, someone slashed all 4 of my tires. No note, no theft, just a quiet, cruel message. That's when I knew they weren't trying to make peace. They wanted to punish me for standing up. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a lawyer. Aaron was calm, professional, younger than I expected, but sharp. I laid everything out: the cruise, the apartment, the slashed tires, the break-in attempt. He asked if I wanted to press charges. I told him not yet. What I wanted was boundaries. We sent a cease and desist letter. No contact, no coming near my home or work, no crossing the line again, silence. For a few days, nothing. I started to hope. Then I got a photo from my neighbor Rachel, taking a selfie outside my building. My car in the background. Caption, "Found the snake pit. Snake just visiting the zoo." My aunt liked it. My cousin Ellie, too, the little girl I babysat when she was 6. The next day, a Reddit account popped up with my initials. It posted a rebuttal thread accusing me of being a liar, a greedy monster, a thief who stole from the family fund. They even used a photo of Max, claiming I was using him for pity. I didn't respond. It was so far from the truth, I was sickened just reading it. Then I noticed something strange in one of their posted photos from the cruise, a crew member's name tag, perfectly clear. I emailed the cruise line, pretending to be concerned about lost family members. The reply came the next day. Mom, Dad, and Emma had booked a luxury suite for a 5-night Caribbean cruise. Not economy, not last minute. A suite, with an all-inclusive premium package. The very weekend I had tried to organize a simple family getaway. I didn't post the evidence. I didn't want to fuel the fire. Instead, I sent the screenshot quietly to the family chat they'd abandoned. No message, no caption, just the truth. Then I blocked them again. That week, an unmarked letter arrived, no return address, but unmistakably Dad's handwriting. "You always thought you were smarter than us, but you forget who made you, who fed you, who raised you. You've embarrassed us all. Fix it or we will." That night at 2:18 a.m., someone rang my buzzer nonstop. I didn't answer. I didn't even look. I just sat on my couch, lights off, phone in hand. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't scared. I was done. The next morning, I got the restraining order against Mom, Dad, and Emma. Aaron took all the evidence: texts, photos, Reddit screenshots, voicemail from Aunt Michelle. He didn't hesitate. I changed my phone number again, set all social media to private, and warned my building manager. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt empty. The family I'd believed in was gone. Not lost, gone. Then something unexpected happened. A message from Mom. Not a text, not a call. A photo. Their renovated house. New paint, new windows, a fresh driveway. Caption, "Glad we didn't wait for your help." I stared at that photo for a long time. They had rewritten the past, forgotten all the money I sent for repairs. HVAC, the kitchen remodel. I never bragged, never asked for thanks, but they rewrote it anyway. I started to doubt myself, not because I was wrong, but because no one else seemed to care about the truth. A cousin reached out. "People are talking. Maybe take down your post." I didn't reply. For the first time, I realized no one had ever asked why I'd been so generous. Not when they lived rent-free in my apartment. Not when I showed up with groceries or called to check if they needed anything. The truth was, I was buying something that didn't exist. Their approval. I was the problem child. Emma was golden. I wasn't messy. I did well in school, got a job early, moved out and stayed out. But I didn't smile much. I didn't laugh at Dad's jokes. I asked questions that made others uncomfortable. So I worked, saved, bought a place of my own, offered it to them without hesitation. Because maybe, finally, they'd see me as more than a disappointment. Instead, they saw a new way to use me. That weekend, I passed their old house, the one they'd just finished renovating. There was a for sale sign out front. A couple walked up with an agent. They were selling it. I sat across the street and watched. I didn't take pictures. They never planned to go back. The apartment was just a stopgap, a payday, and I was the bridge. That night, I poured a drink and read Mom's last message again. "Glad we didn't wait for your help." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because they'd finally admitted it. They didn't want my help. They wanted my silence. But I'm not silent anymore. The sale of the house was the final nail in the coffin. I never got a call or a heads up. Just watched the pending status on Zillow flicker, then flip to sold, and then disappear altogether. All those renovations, the new windows, the fresh paint, the kitchen upgrades, all the things I'd helped pay for, gone. A week later, Aunt Michelle posted a photo on Facebook. Mom, Dad, and Rachel on her porch. Dad had a beer in hand. Rachel kicked back with sunglasses on, like she owned the place. Mom was smiling like they'd never left. "Fresh start with my people," she captioned it. No apology, no explanation, no recognition of the months they spent lying to me while living under my roof. Just a move on. And me, I didn't exist anymore. At first, I thought anger would wash over me, but it didn't. Mostly, I felt finished. Like tightening the last bolt on something that had been breaking for years. I didn't hear from any of them after that. No texts, no emails, no desperate calls. Even my birthday came and went without a single message. And for the first time, I didn't wait by my phone. The Reddit post stayed up. Sometimes strangers would message me, thanking me for sharing, telling me they'd been through similar things, asking how it ended. I answered when I wanted to, ignored the rest. Mostly, I left it up to remind myself I wasn't crazy. One day, I got an email from the property manager in Colorado Springs, the old apartment Rachel and the family had left behind. She told me Rachel had come by, asking to pick up some things from the locked guest room. I told management to box everything up, inventory it properly, and ship it to a storage unit across town. I paid for 2 months and gave instructions that Rachel could retrieve it anytime. No note, no guilt trip, just the things they left behind. 30 days passed. Then the storage company sent notice that the unit was cleared. Unclaimed items were donated. That was it. No contact, no thanks, no dramatic finale, just nothing. And honestly, that was what I wanted. But there's one thing I never told anyone, the hardest part of all. Max, our family dog. The yellow lab who didn't care about drama. All he wanted was a treat and a walk. When I moved to Denver, I wanted to take Max with me. Mom insisted he was happier at home. He became a pawn, used in texts to manipulate me. After I locked them out, Mom sent me a photo of him staring out the window. Said he still misses you. Months later, I learned Max had passed away. I only found out because a family friend posted a tribute on Facebook, a simple photo with a rainbow emoji and the words, "Rest in peace, good boy." I sat down on my kitchen floor and cried harder than I ever had during the entire ordeal. Not for the people I'd lost, for Max. He never took sides. He was the only one I'd have let back in. Since then, I've rebuilt my life. The Colorado Springs apartment is rented out to someone who actually pays rent. My Denver place finally feels like mine again. I got new furniture, painted the walls, started cooking more, even started therapy. Mostly to untangle the part of me that kept trying to earn love from people who never gave it freely. And you know what? I'm good. Not perfect. Not cured in some Hollywood montage kind of way. Just good. Sometimes people ask if I regret what happened. If I would do it differently, the answer is no. I drew a line not to punish them, but to protect myself. Maybe that's what being an adult really means, not proving who's right, but deciding what you'll allow and what you won't. I tried to be generous. I gave them time, space, money, patience. All they had to do was not spit on it. They couldn't do that. So I walked away, and I haven't looked back since. After walking away, silence became my new normal. No calls, no messages, no guilt trips, just quiet. At first, it felt like a void, empty and heavy, but slowly that silence turned into peace. I realized that sometimes the hardest part isn't the fight or the betrayal, it's accepting when a chapter ends. And knowing you're the one who has to close the book. People often ask me how I survived that kind of family fallout. The truth, it wasn't easy. There were nights I lay awake, haunted by what ifs. What if I'd tried harder? What if I had forgiven more? What if I had stayed silent? But deep down, I knew staying silent was the real betrayal to myself. I had to protect my sanity, my dignity, my future. Therapy helped me untangle the knots those years of trying to earn love from people who only gave it when it suited them. It wasn't about me. It was about their need to control and manipulate. I started to rebuild my life on my own terms. Made new friendships. Focused on my work. Took up hobbies I'd long neglected. And slowly, I found joy again. One day, I realized I wasn't carrying the weight of their approval anymore. It was liberating. Like stepping out from under a heavy cloud into sunlight. I even reconnected with a few distant cousins who had quietly supported me all along. They had seen the truth but had been too afraid to speak up. The Reddit post I made years ago still gets messages now and then, people sharing their own stories, thanking me for being brave enough to speak out. It reminds me that I'm not alone, and that healing is possible, even when family breaks you. I don't hold hate for my family anymore. Not because I forgot what happened, but because I refuse to let anger steal my peace. Sometimes, I think about what could have been, what a family should be. But I no longer live in that fantasy. I live in the reality I built for myself. I'm proud of the life I've created. Proud that I chose myself when no one else did. And proud that I found the strength to walk away. If there's one thing I hope people take from my story, it's this. You don't have to accept being treated like a burden. You don't have to stay silent. You don't have to let anyone make you feel less than you are. Sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give yourself is to say enough. And that's what I did. I said enough. And it set me free. Thank you for reading my story. If you've ever felt alone or used, know you're not. There's hope on the other side. And a life worth living. Waiting for you. The dust had finally settled. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. Like the calm after a storm that leaves you wondering what's been broken and whether it can ever be fixed. Months had passed since the last word from my family, since the locks were changed, since I'd closed the door on that life. The wounds were still raw, but for the first time, I could breathe without the weight of their expectations crushing me. Therapy helped more than I expected. I learned how to untangle the knot of guilt I'd carried around like a second skin. Guilt that I wasn't enough. Guilt for cutting ties. Guilt for protecting myself. Slowly, I started to see that none of it was mine to carry. Their choices weren't reflections of my worth. Rebuilding my life wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic reinventions. It was in the small moments, painting my apartment walls a color I actually liked, cooking dinner just for me, finally getting that couch I'd wanted for years. I started going to a local community center to volunteer, teaching basic computer skills to seniors. It felt good to help without strings attached, without needing anything in return. Friends became my chosen family, people who knew my story without judgment, who celebrated my victories and held space for the days I stumbled. One night, at a small get-together, a friend asked me what I missed most about my old family. I thought for a moment and realized I missed the idea of them, the family I had hoped for, not the one I had. The holidays were different now. No awkward dinners or forced smiles. Instead, I traveled to a cabin with friends, where laughter wasn't stained with resentment. I bought gifts for those who mattered, not out of obligation, but out of genuine affection. It felt foreign at first, but slowly, I learned how to enjoy peace without guilt. There were days when I'd catch myself checking my phone, half expecting a message from Mom or Rachel. Those moments were bittersweet. I wondered if they ever thought about what was lost or if they were too busy rewriting their own stories. Sometimes I imagined what it would take for them to reach out with real understanding, but I knew some wounds ran too deep. The house they renovated, it sold quietly, like the chapter it closed. I never heard who bought it, and I didn't care. That house was never mine. Just a place where memories and money tangled in a way that no longer held me. One day, out of the blue, I received a simple text from my cousin Ellie. No drama, no accusations, just a quiet check-in. We met for coffee, and for the first time, we talked openly. She told me she'd always seen how hard I tried, how unfair things had been. It felt like a small crack in the wall I'd built, a reminder that maybe not everyone had turned away. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day, we'll find a way back to each other not because of obligation, but because we choose to. But for now, I'm choosing myself, choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion. This story isn't about winning or losing, it's about learning where to draw the line, and having the courage to walk away when crossing it means losing yourself. Family is complicated, messy, and sometimes painful, but it's not an excuse to stay in a place that hurts more than it heals. So here I am, still healing, still growing, still figuring it out one day at a time. And for the first time, I'm okay with that.